Ukraine is winning the war against Russian oil. Russia says everything is fine in Crimea, which is funny because every time Ukraine hits another train full of fuel, Crimea looks less like a peninsula and more like a fire sale. Hey everyone, Wes O'Donnell here, and today we're talking about Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, the SSO, who on the night of August 21st turned a Russian fuel train into the hottest ticket in town. Literally. This wasn't some random strike, it was a precision hit on the Dzhankoi railway station in occupied Crimea, one of Moscow's key arteries keeping its southern forces alive. Think about it, trains aren't just transport. In Russia's case, they're basically the IV drips that keep a terminal patient on life support. Cut that line, and the southern grouping of Russian forces suddenly finds itself very thirsty very quickly. So what actually happened? Well, Ukraine's SSO struck a Russian train loaded with fuel and lubricants in the dead of night. Shortly after, photos and videos started circulating. Smoke plumes, highways covered in soot, locals filming from buses as if this was just another Tuesday in occupied Crimea. Russia's officials, of course, claimed nothing happened. Then they admitted something happened, but assured everyone it was just exercises. Because nothing says routine training like fuel trains spontaneously combusting at railway junctions. This is Dzhankoi, by the way, the same city where Ukraine previously blew up an S-400 system in 2024. So if you're a Russian soldier stationed there, you might be wondering if you accidentally signed up for the job of official Ukrainian target practice. But this wasn't a one-off. This strike in Crimea was part of a larger Ukrainian campaign targeting Russian logistics all over occupied territory and even inside Russia proper. That same week, a drone strike torched the Novoshanktisk oil refinery in Rostov. Local residents reported hearing 5 explosions before the place went up in flames. Meanwhile, in Voronezh, another drone hit an energy facility, plunging villages into darkness and delaying 19 trains. Yes, 19. Russia's railway system, this supposedly untouchable backbone of Mother Russia, brought to a halt because Ukraine keeps sending cheap drones on one-way tickets. And let's not forget, Ukraine recently blew up another fuel train in occupied Zaporizhzhia. That blaze was so massive, it could be seen from space. You know you've made an impression when NASA satellites are picking up your handiwork. When Ukraine blows up refineries, Russia's fuel prices take off. Since early August, Ukraine has been on a rampage through Russia's refining network. Key targets? Refineries in Ryazan, Novokubishevsk, Volgograd, Saratov, Sizran. The list reads like a refiner's greatest hits. These attacks aren't symbolic, they've knocked out about 10% of Russia's refining capability and triggered a government ban on gasoline exports. The result is retail and wholesale fuel prices have gone ballistic. At one point, Euro 95 gasoline soared 55% year to date, and that's wholesale. Retail pumps have followed suit, especially in far-flung regions like Crimea and Siberia. In some places, AI-95, which is their mid-grade fuel, vanished entirely, unless you're on a ration card. This isn't just number wrangling, it's a political headache for Moscow. Putin's popularity depends on cheap fuel, a national crutch. Suddenly, drivers in Rostov and Volgograd are paying more to fill up, while the Kremlin tries to tell them, nothing to see here, folks. That always goes over well. Fuel crunches also slow down military logistics. When fuel is scarce or rationed, every convoy, every armored column, every "we're still advancing" press photo gets delayed or canceled. Ukrainian drones aren't just bombing oil tanks, they're grinding the Russian war machine's wheels to a halt, one price hike at a time. So yes, Ukraine isn't just shining a spotlight on Russian supply vulnerabilities, they're lighting the fuse. And if Moscow doesn't fix this fast, Russians might be paying more for gas than the Russian oligarchs pay for yacht fuel. That's how you start uprisings, folks. Now, according to Russia's Ministry of Defense, they shot down, wait for it, 49 drones in one night. 21 over Rostov, 7 over Voronezh, and 3 each over Bryansk and Kaluga. 2 over Oriel, and 1 over Kursk. Oh, and 1 over Tula, plus 4 over Crimea and 2 over the Black Sea. If you add it all up, Russia apparently shot down more drones than Ukraine actually launched. At this point, Moscow's air defense reports are like Soviet tractor factory numbers, wildly inflated, scientifically impossible, but great for the propaganda machine. Meanwhile, the fires, the smoke, and the lost power grids suggest otherwise. If this is what all intercepted looks like, I'd hate to see what a successful strike does. But let's get serious for a second. Why hit trains and refineries? Because logistics wins wars. You can have all the tanks, missiles, and artillery pieces in the world, but without fuel, they're just overpriced lawn ornaments. Russian forces in the south rely heavily on the rail network. Every shell, every tank of fuel, every ration for soldiers moves on those tracks. Take out one fuel train, and you don't just cause a temporary fire, you force Moscow to reroute, delay, and stretch its already overburdened supply lines. In Zaporizhzhia, a single strike wiped out 9 tankers instantly. That's thousands of liters of fuel gone in one fiery boom. Multiply that over weeks and months, and you're talking about a strategic paralysis. This is what modern warfare looks like when a smaller nation refuses to fight by the invader's rules. Ukraine isn't wasting million-dollar missiles on individual tanks. They're striking the arteries, fuel, rail, power plants, because starving the beast is more effective than punching it in the face. It's asymmetric warfare at scale. A $30,000 drone takes out a $50 million refinery. A handful of operators sabotage a fuel train and tie up logistics networks for days. The cost-benefit ratio is brutal, and it's working. But let's talk about Crimea specifically. Since 2014, Russia has poured billions into turning it into a fortress. Air bases, S-400 batteries, naval facilities, rail hubs. It was supposed to be untouchable. But in practice, Crimea is an island tethered by a fragile bridge and a few rail lines. Ukraine figured this out early. Hit the Kerch Bridge, hit Dzhankoi, hit Sevastopol's naval units. It forces Russia to divert enormous resources just to keep Crimea supplied. Every time a train goes up in flames, Crimea becomes less of a fortress and more of a liability. And here's the best part. When Ukraine hits a full depot, Russian governors tell locals not to worry. It was planned exercises. When a nuclear power plant reactor mysteriously disconnects after a drone strike, they swear safety is not threatened. When a refinery explodes, they claim every single drone was intercepted. At some point, you'd think Russians might stop believing this nonsense from their government. But then again, this is the same country where people still think the Moskva cruiser sank in a storm. For Ukraine, these strikes are not about fuel, they're about tempo. Every disrupted train, every delayed supply line, every blackout in a Russian city slows Moscow's ability to wage war. And it's psychological. Russian civilians who were told the war would never touch them are now hearing explosions in Rostov, in Belgorod. They're seeing trains delayed, lights out, factories burning. The Kremlin can lie, but people can smell the smoke in their own backyards. Meanwhile, Ukraine shows its allies, look what we can do with limited resources. Imagine what we could do with more. Now let's pause here. Imagine being a Russian train conductor right now. You thought your job was stressful before? Now every time you pull into a station, you're praying the next sound you hear isn't a Ukrainian drone doing a kamikaze run straight into your fuel cars. The new Russian job market slogan is, become a train engineer, see the countryside, occasionally get caught in a fireball. Some in the West are whispering about territorial concessions for peace, give up Crimea, give up the Donbas, and maybe Russia will stop. But Ukraine isn't negotiating with fireballs and black smoke. Every strike in Crimea is a reminder this land isn't safe for Russia. It isn't stable for Russia, and it will never be truly Russia's. You can occupy it, you can build bases on it, but if every fuel train you run goes up in flames, you're just holding sand that's slipping through your fingers. Ukraine's strategy is simple. Keep burning the Russian lifelines until the Kremlin is forced to choose between sustaining this war or sustaining its own country. Russia wanted a quick victory. Instead, they're stuck playing firefighters in Crimea, fuel truck driver in Zaporizhzhia, and Blackout Technician in Voronezh. And Ukraine? They just keep on sending drones and those badass operators. That's it for today, friends. Subscribing is the best way to keep this channel healthy and fight back against the faceless AI slop YouTube channels that are flooding this platform. And as always, have a great weekend. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.